Hello, and welcome to So What, a place where I ask the question that so many of my students want to ask. So what? Who cares about Renaissance art? My phone takes way better pictures. Today we will talk about the Renaissance, and the first thing we need to address is that the Renaissance didn't just see a shift in art, it saw a shift in society as well. Trade is going to make people more wealthy and is going to allow for them to procure more goods. It's also going to mean that items are going to be able to be moved around more easily and for cheaper, which means that more merchants and artists can get different materials that they will end up using to create more art. These wealthy merchants and bankers are actually going to become patrons of the arts. There are largely two reasons why wealthy families would invest in art, other than valuing beauty, which is honestly probably the least likely. The first is the same reason why people would get it today. It's equal parts investment and prestige. A masterpiece by a famous artist will not lose value, and it's one of a kind. It becomes a status symbol. The second reason is some of these families were running these cities. In order to keep people from questioning this, they funded public art projects. If these families could create visual improvements, then they could win the people's support. As anyone would tell you, the quality of art matters. So let's talk about some ways art changed during the Renaissance.
Hey, duh! I just got some art and I would love to show it to you.
Hey, Ikoff, I'd love to see this artwork.
I call it So What? You know, to signify the fact that no one cares about Renaissance art.
Well, that's not fair. I care about it.
You? You're not some great authority on art. You struggle with drawing a smiley face. Oh, and pardon the candles, we're remodeling the lair.
Hey, lots of artists struggle to create self portraits, okay? But perhaps you're right. I'm not an authority figure when it comes to art.
So I'm right? Does that mean I win?
Luckily enough, I happen to know the authority when it comes to art. Allow me to introduce Monsieur Da. Buongiorno. I am not actually French. I just find that the French language conveys a certain amount of beauty in the rhetoric. I see by your shocked silence that you are aware of my brilliance.
Well, actually,
Shocked silence, indeed. Now listen close, because we only have so much time, and before we can mix the paints, we must first understand our canvas. So what did artwork look like before the Renaissance, in a pre-Renaissance era? There are a few ways in which we can identify it. Firstly, the artwork has a very limited color palette, featuring mostly dull and dark colors. Secondly, you can always tell the important people because they feature a halo surrounding them. Third, the art is done in a 2D format. I mean, just look at those ballerina feet. I call them twinkle toes. Toot, 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 toot. Of course you do. Now, artists are always analyzing artwork other than their own. And this might be the biggest reason why the Renaissance sees such a leap in skill. There are largely four characteristics of Renaissance art: vivid, bright colors, perspective, balance, and classical themes. As you can see here, a large array of different colors draw the eye. That is because during this time period, oil and canvas become the artistic medium. A mineral called lapis lazuli is mixed with turpentine and then oil. And from here, we see a burst of color. Developing perspective had always eluded the pre-Renaissance artists, which is why they depended so much on that halo to signify who the most important person was.
is that why you wear a scarf?
The obvious way to show perspective is through the use of a method called chiaroscuro, which refers to the use of light and shadow when developing perspective. The light shall always emanate from the same place, casting a shadow, no matter where it touches. This is a subtle feature, but one that is really important in order to make you believe that what you're seeing is real. The other way to show perspective is to add depth, creating the illusion that something is farther away than it actually is. This brings realism to the painting, a term that could be used to describe most Renaissance pieces. Perspective may obviously be seen in Masaccio's The Tribute of Money. The shadows cast appear to be from a consistent light source. There is a person kneeling by the water that looks to be in the distance. And those mountains are just out of focus enough to make you think they are a great distance away. Balance does not mean that the work must be symmetrical, but instead that it feels like a work as a whole. This can be done by utilizing the background in what we call a pyramid configuration. This can be seen in Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper. There is an obvious feel of balance within this, and the eye is drawn to the figure of Jesus. This is done through a technique called the vanishing point, where invisible lines all over the piece are going to converge into one central figure. In this instance, Jesus. Jesus does not need the halo, because your eyes are already drawn to him. Whether it be Greek, Roman, or biblical, classical themes can be seen throughout Renaissance pieces. It shouldn't be surprising because, it's called the Renaissance, so you know. So patrons and the church wanted their art to reflect that Renaissance.
The church funded Renaissance artists?
Why, yes, the church not only yielded great wealth, but immense power. An artist had to be very careful not to anger the church. Why, Michelangelo was commissioned to paint the Sistine Chapel, and while he did not want the commission, something told him that he must do it anyways. The church. But whatever it was, it convinced him.
So, artists didn't decide what they created?
That would depend on the patron. Some gave strict orders, others only vague ideas. But the artist had the final say. Just look at the Sistine Chapel that Michelangelo would go on to paint over a period of years. And initially, he didn't want the commission. He actually ran away from it, even though the Pope himself commissioned the artwork. His original commission said that he was to create simply figures of the apostles. Michelangelo would go on to abandon this plan and decided to create his own masterpiece. And what we are now left with is perhaps the most visually stunning piece from the Renaissance, if not all modern art. And if we just take one panel from this, we go to the creation of Adam. If you look at the angels surrounding God, look at their eyes. They're looking to Adam with envy. Even the angels envy us because we are the lucky ones. This is the influence that humanism had on art. Humans were the important figures. The point of these breakthroughs is that artists study other artists, and when one has a breakthrough, many will follow. Beyond this, artists weren't just making a lot of money. They were building prestige. This sort of attention makes other people want to follow in their footsteps. Art will spread, and the Northern Renaissance will begin, and while it's certainly influenced by the Italian Renaissance, it takes on a shape of its own. While Italy will focus on ideal beauty, the North will focus on intense realism. Italy will focus on heroic males, while the North will focus on regular people and landscapes. You can see this by comparing Raphael's School of Athens and Bruegel's Hunters in the Snow. Raphael will put contemporary figures amongst philosophers and artists, and each is idealized in the most perfect and ornate way, and the whole is very balanced. Whereas Bruegel will show people as they are, not idealizing one. And the painting itself appears to be complex and irregular. Both these artists and many more will inspire people to create, to enjoy, to explore, and maybe one day create that perfect, irreplaceable piece of art. Au revoir.
As you can see, Renaissance art is not just visually stunning.
in many ways, it embodied the movement of humanism. And the more people that saw this art and witnessed it internalized its message. And thus, humanism spreads. And so does the notion of using knowledge to create beauty. Whether these two trends are the result of a cultural shift or are the underlying cause of it is up for debate. But what can't be disputed is the fact that this artistic leap will go on to inspire future generations of artists for centuries to come. Have a great day.
I don't understand. Not about the art. I understand that now. It was explained very well, in fact, very thoroughly. I don't understand how Dahl got out of that one. I had him beat. It was that Monsieur Dahl. I will find a way, but first, I'm just going to stare at this Botticelli painting, just for a little bit. The depth and realism are incredible. Why do I keep learning? I just want to stay in the Dark Ages.